In this class, we're going to take a look at how you expand brackets, sometimes called multiplying out brackets. This is a really core algebraic skill which you're going to see millions of times. So this is a really important one to get very competent with. It's not a particularly difficult process. Essentially, all we do is multiply everything that's, well, if there's one thing outside the bracket, we multiply to everything inside. And if we've got two brackets, we multiply everything in the first to everything in the second. So that's the only real distinction, is how many brackets you've got. In terms of how you then adapt that to different scenarios, it never really changes much. If you've got two brackets here versus two brackets here, you'll pretty much do the same thing. These look slightly different because of the negatives, and maybe this one's got a number on the end, but essentially it's going to be a very similar process. If you've never done this before, then it basically works like this. So 4 sitting in front of a bracket means 4 times that bracket. And when we remove the bracket by multiplying out the bracket, expanding the bracket, we just multiply the 4 to the x. So those guys will multiply, and we also multiply the 4 to the 2. If the bracket had more terms in it, if we had something else in here, like say a plus b or an a or some other variable, then we would just multiply the 4 to that term as well. So you multiply the number outside to everything that's inside. Sometimes it's not even a number outside, it can be a letter outside. All of these work in the same way. Here we're going to multiply the x to the terms inside the bracket. So that's the idea, multiplying everything outside to everything inside. So here we're going to get 4 times x, which is just 4x. 4 times 2, which is 8. We keep the plus in between, and that is the bracket multiplied out. So there's nothing really more to it than that. Taking that same kind of technique down here, x times x gives you x squared. X times 3 gives you 3x, and we put the plus in between because we had a plus here. If it was a minus here, it would be a minus here. Okay, so applying this technique again to some slightly different examples. So minus 2 times 4, and then minus 2 times minus x. So minus 2 times 4 gives us negative 8. Minus 2 times minus x, that's a double negative, which makes a positive. So that's going to come out to be plus 2x. We might want to go a bit further with that one. If you've already done simplifying algebraic expressions, you'll know that we don't love having a negative here on the left. It's okay, but it's kind of a little bit uncool, so we prefer to spin them around and put the negative in the middle like that. So what we've done there is we've both multiplied out the bracket, and then we've kind of not quite simplified the expression, but we've rejigged the expression in one particular way. This one here, same sort of scenario with the bracket. The 7 on the end isn't part of the bracket, so it doesn't play any part in the multiplying out. A very common mistake with these questions is to multiply out the bracket okay, so multiply that to there and that to there, but then also to multiply the 2 to the 7. But we don't need to do that because the 7's not part of the bracket, so it's not being multiplied by 2. So 2 times 2x gives us 4x, 2 times negative 3 gives us negative 6. We just keep the 7 on the end, like that. This one can go one line further because we can combine the like terms. The like terms are the two number terms, so minus 7 plus 6, no, sorry, other way around. Minus 6 plus 7 gives us plus 1, and that would be the final answer there. So for that one, we both multiplied out the bracket to get us to this point, and then we simplified the expression to get us to that point. That's quite common. You'll often have to do that, multiplying out and then simplifying. Okay, and we're going to have to do that in these two as well. So when you've got two brackets, you need to make sure that you multiply everything in the first to everything in the second. So the x has to multiply to the x, it also has to multiply to the 2, the 7 has to multiply to the x, and the 7 has to multiply to the 2. This is a really, really core skill, being able to multiply two brackets together. These are important as well, multiplying out one bracket, but these guys come up in a whole bunch of different topics and a whole bunch of different question types. So just going through those sequentially, try and do the sort of power, the highest power first, which would be the x times the x to give you the x squared. So if you're new to these, it might take a while to figure out how to keep track of the working. So you might want to, for example, draw on the little arrow, the little lines like I've done, and then, I don't know, give them like a little check mark when you've done them. It's up to you. You'll figure them out pretty quickly. So x times x gives me x squared. X times minus 2 gives me minus 2x, and I could sort of check that one. 7 times x gives me plus 7, and I can check that one. 7 times minus 2 gives me minus 14. That's the format you want to do them in. So you've got your x squared, your 2x terms, so you're always going to get 2x terms for these, because usually these brackets are x number, x number. If you do it in this order, you'll get an x squared, and then you'll get, or maybe a number x squared, so this one will be a 2x squared, but some kind of squared, then your x terms, and then your number. So when you multiply those out initially, you get 4 terms, and then you can take a line to simplify by combining the two middle terms. The two middle terms are always going to be of the same type, so like terms. So we've got minus 2x plus 7x, which gives us plus 5x, and then we just keep the minus 14 on the end there. Okay, so let's look at one final example. I'll drop the arrows this time, and I'll just go through the working. So 2x times x gives us 2x squared. 2x times negative 6 gives you negative 12x. I was going to just say the two middle terms, you can kind of do those in either order. So it would be okay if you did the 7x first here, then the minus 2x. That's maybe personal preference, or it maybe just it depends on how you learn this technique. There's different ways to order them, but you should really go square term and then the x terms and then the number term. So I've gone 2x times x to get 2x squared, 2x times negative 6 to get that guy, and then I'm going to do 3 times x to get 3x, 3 times negative 6 to get minus 18. Then just taking one more line to combine the middle x terms, so I get 2x squared minus 12 plus 3 is minus 9x, and then minus 18 on the end. So these guys here are called trinomials. So tri, 3, 1, 2, 3. So they've got 3 terms with descending powers of x. So an x squared, an x, and then a number. Same with this guy, it's a trinomial, x squared, an x, and a number. Trinomials are really important. You'll see those in a whole bunch of topics that you're probably going to do in the future. It's worth noting with the trinomial that, you know, you start off with 2 brackets, you get 4 terms, you simplify that down to 3. But remember, these could go backwards as well. Later on, you're going to learn how to factorize, which means taking this form and going back to this form. So at the moment, we're multiplying out the brackets. Later on, you'll learn to go backwards and put them back into brackets, which is a little bit more difficult. If you're practicing going this way at the moment, just take a look at your final answer. Think about how that relates back to where you started. So for example, here a 14 relates to a 7 times a 2. And here, 3 times a 6, which is 18, relates obviously to the 18 there. So you start to see the pattern between the numbers basically. So that's how we expand brackets or multiply out brackets. 2 different cases, the one where you've got 1 bracket, the one where you've got 2 brackets. Definitely spend a bit of time practicing these. This is really a core algebra skill, which you're going to see a lot in the future. You want to get to the point with these where you just don't really think about it, you just see it and you just automatically, you know, write out the bracket without really much thought. So check out like a million practice questions on this topic.